Does it still feel professional now?
Your microphone isn't.
The microphone's going. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Hey,
look at who it is. It's us again. Yeah, like the Three Stooges. What?
wise guy.
Hi, I'm John, and this is Talking Trains once again. And this is Murph, and that's Eugene, our guest this month. And you may have seen that I did a little tease on the channel today of what's more powerful than the big boy, because everyone's talking about the big boy these days. The big boy's out making the rounds, going places where it's never been.
And to be fair, it is an amazingly impressive engine.
I'm not saying it isn't. I've seen it up close and personal. I think we all. Well, I don't know. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it up close and personal.
Well,
I whipped out.
Yep, 2/3 of us have seen it up close and personal, and it is an amazing machine, and they've done a great job with it.
Yes.
So the lead for this is not the big boy sucks. It's what's more powerful than the big boy, and people are going to find that out. It was something that I didn't know about until I saw your presentation that we're going to be looking at here today, Eugene, at the Western Pacific convention last year. So, yeah, so that's something else we can talk about later, I guess, or as part of this. But anyway, so before we get to that, though, usually the first couple of minutes of our show, we do a coffee talk. Murph and I are catching up with, yep, that's why we all have our TSG mugs, right? And so this past weekend, a bunch of us went over to Murph's and did some testing of the layout and stuff. Because, you know, we always talk about Murph's layout on this show, and people were probably like pictures or it didn't happen. We don't usually show pictures, but it's really coming along. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun having people over. I was taking notes the whole time. I basically asked that there be no presents, just people's presence, because I really wanted to get some feedback on what was going on among some folks that I know would be kind of gentle and kind this go around, and that worked out really good. Found one electrical problem, and that got fixed actually this last week. Major thing was, holy cow, you know, you put 20 or 25 sound locomotives in a room, you really need to start volume limiting things a little bit. That was quite the thing to learn.
It was pretty loud in there.
Yeah. And then there were some problems with grade changes on the track and that sort of stuff. That'll take a little bit longer to fix.
Did you finally get an engine to go completely over the loop?
We did.
This one.
Watching a DB40 do a complete inversion.
Not that way. I thought you were talking. I do have a Helix. There were no problems on the Helix, so that's cool.
If you get it fast enough, you can do the corkscrew too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So
SD40 doing an Immelman. Hey.
Yeah. So it went really good, and we had a lot of fun. And I'll be doing this again in probably a couple months. I hope. Not the birthday thing. I can only get old so fast.
Well, right, but we need to do more shakedown stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't see any reason to wait a couple months. I mean, is it going to take you that long to finish the fixes that we found?
The grade fixing thing is going to be a little bit of an issue. It's going to be a week-long effort, I think.
Oh. Well, maybe next time. This time when we went, I brought my tripod and stuff, and I was going to make a video about it, but then we didn't really do any of that. So.
No, we had wine.
Yeah, we had wine and had a good time hanging out, which is really what it was about anyway.
And there was video filmed, but no one's ever going to see that.
That's right.
There was a short video filmed, but in the video that I filmed, I said, I'm going to have more stuff to show later.
And then we didn't.
Then we didn't do anything. So
there were a couple of, we should video this. People would actually like to see this. And then we never did. So.
Yeah, we were very professional that day.
Yeah.
When it comes to video
John
stuff.
will be back probably a little bit sooner to actually get some of that recorded, and we'll do some minis on it
shorts. Yeah, which by the way, I should mention that in case people haven't noticed, there have been shorts coming out once a week on Tuesdays that I filmed with Mike Osborne, who's here, by the way. I saw him talking on the text chat here, and they're all about like operational lingo and things terminology you might hear on a real railroad and what it means. and they've been really well received so far. So look for those every Tuesday. I think I have them scheduled up through the end of September or something like that. So anyway, enough of that, unless you have something else to add.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, so on with who is Eugene? Maybe you can tell people who you are, and then we can get to the show.
All right. Well, I see a few people there saying hi, Eugene. So I guess there's a few people that know me coming on this. So my name's Eugene Vicknair. I am in the world of railroading. I have been volunteering with the Western Pacific Railroad Museum. This is my 42nd year.
Wow.
I started volunteering there when I was actually 14.
Okay.
So that, yeah, you can do the math.
Yeah.
People
might be thinking, he seems kind of familiar. It's because we've done those little blurbs for
we've done
right?
we've done the little blurbs.
Yeah.
We've also, beyond railroading, I run a product development company. So my company called Driven Innovation, we basically get paid to invent things. And if you go back, some people might be scratching their head going, he looks kind of familiar, but not railroad. Back in 2002, I actually starred in some of the earliest viral internet commercials.
Really?
There was one in particular that blew up. And I was actually quite famous for about 5 minutes. One of the very first parody viral internet commercials. It got so big, I played on like Good Morning America and Entertainment Tonight and the Today Show. And
people are wondering now what it was. So you should probably not keep them in the dark. I know the answer, but
it was a spoof. It was for a executive recruiting company called Acolo. And it was a spoof of the famous Carl's Jr. commercial where Paris Hilton is wearing a negligee and washing a car and eating a burger.
That's dripping all over the place.
Drips.
And I played the Paris Hilton part. And there's a whole bunch of people going like, "Oh God, I remember that." I've actually had people meet me in public, and when they remember, it's like, "Oh God, I've seen you in women's lingerie."
Yeah, that was you. It's okay, Eugene. We're open-minded here.
So it's a way of saying I do a lot of things, and I've had a very interesting life.
Yeah.
And I'm also the vice president of the Nevada, California, Oregon Railway, which was founded 5 years ago up in Alturas, California, to preserve the Nevada, California, Oregon Railway,
also known as the NCO.
The narrow, crooked, and ornery.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should mention that because I saw Shane Starr's presentation at a PCR convention 4 or 5 years ago, and I had never heard of the NCO. Like, I didn't even know what are they talking about. There was a railroad out there? I didn't know that. So what you're doing with the NCO, I find very interesting. Have you heard of the NCO before today?
Not, no.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're going to put the NCO on the map.
That's our hope.
So
one of the longest narrow gauge on the West Coast, and no one knows about it.
Yeah. Wow.
It was the first I ever heard of it. So
actually, technically the second longest. The Carson, Colorado was a little bit longer.
What about the SPCRR?
South Pacific Coast?
Yeah, how long was that?
That was about
180 or 100 miles?
150 miles, 160 miles.
How long was the NCO?
283.
Oh, so we got
with a 40-mile branch line.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so you're into a lot of historic stuff, which makes this a great fit for the channel because that's 1/3 of what we talk about here is historic preservation. So anyway, as I was saying a minute ago or at the intro, I was lucky enough to be at the Western Pacific convention here that was held jointly with the Rio Grande Historic Society at Sacramento last year because we did a virtual version of it. And
which was awesome. Thank you.
We had a lot of fun, learned a lot. And this presentation that opened my eyes to something like, let me just put it this way. I never thought of Western Pacific as a very big railroad. I always thought of the Western Pacific as like, I don't know, the orange-headed stepchild or the orange locomotive stepchild of the Southern Pacific, which kind of ran that same, going out to Utah.
They were the other route. Yeah, they had those old antique little tiny steam engines and
Yeah, but the Western Pacific had some actually really impressive equipment that I didn't know about. Well, I mean, I kind of did, but kind of didn't because I just never took that active of an interest in it. And then I saw this presentation that we're sharing today, and you'll be surprised by what you hear if you don't already know. We'll just put it that way. So with that, should I bring it up?
Let's go for it.
Let's bring it up. I got to figure out how to bring it up, because that's always an interesting thing here. Hey, it's not coming up.
Uh-oh.
Oh, here it comes.
There we go.
Yep. Now, since the picture on the side is all just cutting most of us out, why don't we just do this? All right. Here we go.
Okay, so today what we're going to be talking about is the Western Pacific's 251 class. They're 2882s. On the WP, they called these the big Malleys or the big Womps. And
Womp.
Yeah,
Is that like
WAM.
Is that like a womp rat?
Yes.
We used to bullseye those with T16s back home.
Exactly. That cracked me up. You know, when I first heard that, it's like, wait a minute. Okay, so that term goes back a ways. Yeah, I used to have Jim Boynton, you know, yeah, we were taking one of those big womps up the canyon. Sucker was just bleeding steam everywhere.
Probably sounded just like that.
He did.
Yeah. So
they were very specifically designed for the territory they went in. And what I have referred to them as is the canyon killers, because that is really what the Western Pacific designed these to do. They were looking for an engine that could defeat the Feather River Canyon. So we've got a map here. So this is the original Western Pacific main line as it was built in 1909. And from the beginning, they had an amazing survey. Of course, the very famous story that they're in their charter, what they put out to all the engineering companies is, we can't have a grade that exceeds 1%. Salt Lake City to Oakland, California, no steeper than 1%. It was a brilliant survey. The original survey was done by the famous Arthur Walter Ketty, and he ran it down the Feather River Canyon, which is, anyone who's ever seen that place, they know it's kind of amazing when you stop and think about it, how shallow that grade really was, because it's a very, very difficult place, even today, to operate in. It's narrow, it's twisty, and as a WP engineer once told me, yeah, okay, Donner may have snow, but the canyon likes throwing rocks.
Yeah, and Highway 70 is closed all the time to rock slides.
Yeah. It's like, it's not whether 70's open, it's how much are you restricted by what's wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
So when they built the WP, they had this great survey that got them through this very treacherous area. They were using modern mechanized equipment. It really made for a very great foundation for the railroad. Eventually, of course, the whole line was done with like steel trestles. You know, it's a beautifully engineered line. And even doing tricks like the Williams Loop, you know, to maintain that 1% at one point outside Quincy, California, they had to have the track loop over itself. And just even today, the Union Pacific takes advantage of that. Here we see, interestingly enough, an eastbound train. But anymore, most of the trains go westbound. So they're going down this nice, gentle grade. And here we go. The photo, you know, you think of the photo of the gold spike for the CP and the UP, and, you know, big celebration. Well, here's when the WP was completed. It was like, we're freezing, we're tired, let's just take the picture and get out of here. But this is November 1st, 1909. This is the start of the official start of operations on the Western Pacific. Now, in the early years, the WP was running with, even for that day, 1909, relatively small power. And a lot of their power was copies of Rio Grande engines. You know, copies of their 280s, their 46, even their 060s. And so to give you an idea, to give you some context of what we're going to be talking about here. So here is one of their classic 280s. They got a set from Baldwin, a set from Alco. And these were 43,000 pounds of tractive effort.
43,000?
43,000.
Okay. Put that number in your back pocket.
So about 21 tons of tractive effort. And, you know, if we're talking about the Central Valley or out in the Nevada desert, you can pull a decent sized train with that. you start talking about Altamont Pass, Silver Zone Pass out in Nevada, or the Canyon, now you started getting some restrictions. They also had, of course, their well-known set of 460s, but those were even less powerful. Those were, they used them on freights, but they were passenger engines. 29,000 pounds of tractive effort, so not even 15 tons of tractive effort.
This is a function mostly of their driver size.
The driver size, their weight on drivers,
yeah,
you know, things of that nature. So they were really intended to be, you know, again, passenger engines, although they did use them on locals and things like that. Very quickly, even though a lot of these engines, because of the WP's financial situation, a lot of these early engines would serve till the end of steam. I mean, they had engines in 1951. They still had engines running that had been built in 06.
Wow.
So, but they figured out really fast that these engines were not enough. They had a beautiful plant, well engineered, and effectively some steam locomotives that got outmoded really fast. And here we can see, here's a nice little chart that kind of gets to the crux of the problem. So this is a condensed profile of the WP. And what we're focusing on is this section right here. That is the Feather River Canyon. That is the heart of the problem that the locomotives we're going to talk about they were designed to tackle. That is over 110 miles of non-stop 1% grade. So, like, you know, let's think of something like Donner Pass. Donner Pass is way steeper, but Donner isn't really continuous. It's kind of got some ups and downs. It's kind of got some areas where it flats out or lessens. You leave Oroville, you're climbing to Portola, unrelenting 1% for 110 miles plus. That's a tough climb.
It's a lot of water.
It's a lot of water, a lot of fuel. You're hauling a lot of, and now imagine too, let's say you have to stop. Let's say you get to Cresta and you've got to go in the hole for somebody. And now you've got to start that train on a 1% grade.
Oh,
yeah.
Sounds brutal.
It is. It was. It still is to this day. So it's also a curvy layout. Between Oroville and Portola, there are over 375 curves and 30 tunnels. And the longest of those tunnels is over a mile. So again, you know, all respect to Donner, but this is no slouch of a route. This is a tough route. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the canyon likes throwing rocks.
That's a little more than rocks, Eugene. I think there's some dirt with that one.
A buddy of mine who was an engineer on the Rod McClure, he was an engineer on the WP and the UP. One time I called him and he picked up his cell phone right after he had just struck a rock, and it rolled under his locomotive like a ball bearing, and he came about 20 feet from going off the edge into the canyon, riding a Dash 9 down the hill.
Oh.
And of course, you know, just cleaning up after something like that. You know, here they got one of the big hooks out, and they're trying to fish something out of the river. So the WP very quickly started looking like, what can we do to tame this profile, because this is rough. And in 1916, they got their first big engines. They got a set of 2662 compounds. So these are true Malleys. And they were built by Alco, and these did pretty good. You know, of course they're very slow, you know, as a lot of these mallets were, but they started allowing them to be able to move the traffic a little better. They got 5 of them, and then they would get another set of 5 a number of years later. They also started getting very modern 282s. And that's something you can see. The biggest surviving WP steam locomotive is Western Pacific 334, which is at the Rio Vista Museum. And it is a beautiful example of a big, burly, modern 282.
They keep it hidden, though.
They do. They keep it hidden. You know, you got to kind of beg to go see it.
If you know someone, you can get into that shop.
Yeah, it is an awesome engine. You especially if you're used to seeing some of the smaller 282s, and then you stand next to this thing, it's like, oh my God. I was actually, I mentioned Jim Boynton earlier, as a WP steam engineer I got to know very well. The 334 was his favorite steam engine.
Huh.
So these Mikados would become the frontline power, but they still needed something more. Like I said, they got 5 more of the mallets. And they put one of these together with a 282, or sometimes they'd have a couple of 280s. The traffic got so heavy that they started having to multiple the engines. And of course, if you know steam engines, it's not like multipling diesels. Every time you have a steam engine, you have another crew, and
Right.
you've got to match your speed, you've got to match your braking. It is no joke to run multiple steam engines, especially if you've got something like cut in at the tail or mid-train.
Yeah.
But even getting these bigger engines, the cars were getting bigger, the trains were getting bigger. They started adding more traffic. In 1923, the WP became part of Pacific Fruit Express. And you'd have blocks of 60, 65, 75 reefers, all loaded. They're coming out of the valley, all loaded, going up the canyon.
And that's hot freight.
That is hot.
Yeah.
That's hot, cold freight.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully it's not hot freight.
And so the WP, to keep it from becoming really hot freight, the
Right.
WP would toss one of their little mallees, as they later call. They originally call them the mallees or the womps.
Okay.
And then when they got these later ones, they call them the little mallees, or the little womps. They'd put one of the 201s and a mic up front on like 75 loaded reefers. But the cars kept getting bigger. So here's the kind of freight car that we're talking about when the WP opens. This is a wooden boxcar. It's a 40-foot boxcar built in 1909. We actually, at the museum in Portola, we actually have a Rio Grande wooden boxcar very similar to this one. It's great because we can point at that and go, this is, when the railroad opened, this is the kind of car you'd see.
Mm-hmm.
And it weighed about 18 tons light, and it could handle about 40 tons of capacity. Now we go forward 7 years, and the WP was getting similar cars. This is now, you've got a steel underframe on this, or a partial steel underframe. Now this is a complete steel underframe, but still a 40-foot car, still a 40-ton capacity, a little heavier with the steel underframe. And this is 1916. This is when those first 2662s showed up. But now start looking at the march of the car capacities. 1927, they get some hoppers that are 55-ton capacity. 29, boxcars, 50-ton capacity. More 50-ton capacity. Flat cars that could haul 67 tons. Just in 20 years, the capacity of these cars was almost doubling.
Right.
And you're adding more of them to a train. By the time the last of these 2882s came on the railroad, the WP had cars capable of hauling 70 tons. So to handle this, you just needed something bigger. And again, to set our context, let's kind of step back through their smaller steam engines. Here's one of the 280s. Like I said, 43,000 tons of tractive effort. If we talk about an average car weight at 45 tons, that's about 21 to 26 cars up the canyon. That is not a big train. Here's the 460s, even less. Again, they're only 29,000 pounds tractive effort, 14 to 18 freight cars. That's a local.
That's piecemeal in it.
Yeah. So now we're starting to talk about some power. Here's one of those 2662s, 201 class, 80,000 pounds of tractive effort. Now they're hauling 39 to 47 cars of, again, a nominal 45 ton.
Right.
That's a pretty good sized train we're getting to here, which is, again, a big improvement over the consolidations. And then one of their big mics, almost as good, 60,000 pounds, 32 to 36 loaded cars. But again, think back to what I was saying. They're starting to haul big fruit blocks. and vegetable blocks. They're putting 75 loaded cars going up the canyon. There's records of trains going out of Oroville with 5 engines on them, trying to lift all that to Portola. Yeah, you think about, we were talking about, like, you think about 2 steam engines trying to coordinate. Now think about trying to coordinate 5.
I'd just send 5 different trains, I think. That's just me.
Well, you know, and the thing is, one of the things about the canyon, they couldn't have a lot of sightings. So I think you got trains coming down, you got trains going up, and you've only got a certain number of places they can meet.
I can tell you how that works as a dispatcher.
So again, you know, here we have it's on a passenger train, but here we've got a, you know, double heading crew. You got 2 crews on there coordinating through whistle signals, because again, they can't talk to each other. There's no radios. There, you know, hand signals ain't going to cut it. You're going on whistle signals here, and just the feel of the engine.
And the couplers are taut all the way up.
So, as one of the things WP started doing, and this will play into our story as well, as they started getting more of these 282s, a lot of the specs really didn't change. They got bigger tenders, what WP called the desert tender. That's these big rectangular ones. But they also started adding boosters to the trailing truck. Now, these things base 60,000 pounds of tractive effort. That trailing truck booster, a little steam turbine, that added another 11,000 pounds. So that's not an inconsequential addition.
Yeah.
It's a lot when you consider the total.
Yep. Yeah. So now we've come to 1930, and the Western Pacific's motive power superintendent, a guy named M.B. McPartland, he wanted to solve this problem. He wanted to figure out, as I said, he wanted to figure out a canyon killer. What kind of steam engine can take care of this profile, but fit within the curves and fit within, you know, our roundhouses and in all these things. We can't just go and get some monster thing. We need the power, but we have other restrictions. So his metric was those large fruit blocks. And so he went to Baldwin with a set of specifications and some ideas. The motive power department worked on this, and they went to Baldwin. They said, what can we come up with? We want a train. We were in a locomotive that'll handle a train like this solo, be able to climb up to Portola, but then also be able to control it coming down, which sometimes can be even more complicated. And then WP threw a new curveball in this. So you look, our map has grown. Right up there, the High Line, the Northern California extension, opened in 1931. Now that's where WP's 1% grade went out the window. That line tops out at 2.2%. It's a jagged sawtooth, and some of the curves are sharper than 10 degrees.
So that's that little curvy part on the left side, yeah?
Yep, that one going straight up out of Ketty that says the High Line next to it, the fat orange line.
Goes to Beaver, yeah.
Yep. So while they kind of planned to put the 2662s there, they threw that at Baldwin too and said, hey, these new hypothetical engines, they got to run on that line too.
Which included those sharp curves.
So here is what the Western Pacific and Baldwin came up with. The Western Pacific 251 class. They were built in the first set was built in 1931. They were simple engines, so they were not compounds like the 2662s. They were simple engines, and their base tractive effort was 137,000 pounds. But unlike a lot of railroads, WP put a trailing truck booster on these that put them up to 151. Actually, I've seen some specs that said they could go up as much as 151,700 pounds. And what that meant, just without the booster, that was 67 to 79 loaded cars. And with the booster, they could pull 86 to 88 cars from a dead stop.
Wow.
That is a big train.
Yeah.
For that time.
And for the range.
And for that railroad.
Yeah.
And they weighed in over 1 million pounds. These were heavy, powerful engines.
It even looks big in the picture.
Yeah, I've got some coming up where there's people standing next to it, and you really get a sense of how big these monsters were.
So, Eugene, do they keep putting bigger tenders on this so they wouldn't have to stop out of grade?
Nope, that is the only size tender they put on it. They figured out They actually calculated the tenders too.
Uh-huh.
They figured out, and I don't know the exact numbers, but they figured out what it would take to haul that much power, haul that much weight from Oroville to Portola without needing oil.
Okay.
And they tried to limit them to 2 water stops up the canyon.
Okay.
They would sometimes do 3, but it had the water capacity to try and do only 2. And they very carefully thought about that, because that was another thing too. They didn't want to do like a massive tender, because that's more stuff you got to haul.
That's true. And
So
water is heavy.
They were, to use a modern parlance with you people with hybrid cards, they were trying to hypermile this thing.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So to give it some perspective, so here is, of course, one of the fabulous and famous cab forwards.
We love cab forwards.
And you notice, if you were to look at the spec sheet, it's tractive effort. So the WP engine's 137,000 pounds, right?
Yep. Right.
124,300
Right.
for the most powerful cab forwards. So the WP engines could outdo these by about 13,000 pounds without even engaging the booster. And then, of course, you know, we talked about the tagline, what's more powerful than a big boy? Well, what's the tractive effort? Do you know what the tractive effort on a big boy is?
Not off the top of my head.
135,000 pounds.
Okay.
So even without kicking in the booster,
it's more powerful.
One of the WP 2882s could outpull a big boy.
Now we know what's more powerful than a big boy.
Now we know it's more powerful than a big boy.
The mighty big boy.
And I've actually gotten to tease Ed Dickens about this, and before him, Steve Lee. It's like, God, I wish one of these was still around. We could have a pull contest. And if you guys think you're doing good, we'll just engage the booster.
All right.
We were actually joking one time about getting an O-scale model of a WP 251 O-scale model of a big boy and putting him along the track and actually having a pull contest. So another way to put this in perspective, the WP 251s, their increase in tractive effort over those original 280s was 319%.
Wow.
Now here's a fun little chart, because this puts a lot of famous articulateds in perspective. So we're going from the most powerful at the top and less powerful down there. So you can see up at the very top, what we've got is some of the more experimental engines, the triplexes, the Virginian triplex, the Erie triplex, and of course those monstrous Virginian 210-10-2s. So we're talking about, 850, some of the numbers I found like their weights and then their tractive efforts. So, you had some up there that were 850, 900,000 pounds in weight. They're putting out 200,000, 176,000 pounds of tractive effort. And of course, some of them were compounds. But really, if you talk about the ones that there were a lot of them here on the West Coast, about the only engines regularly seen here on the West Coast that could outdo a WP 251 were the Great Northern R2s. And even then, it wasn't by much. You see, they were 153,000 pounds, and with the booster engaged on the WP engines were 151.
Right.
So these were these were among the top articulateds, which blew me away when I started researching these, because like you said, nobody really knows about them.
Yeah. That was a real eye-opener for me watching your presentation the first time. I was like, oh, Western Pacific really had some interesting equipment, like more so than I thought.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's impressive.
And you could
be on that list. You
can see we got the big boy down there. And look between the WP 2882s and the UP 484. They'll come into play later. The Mesabi and Iron Range M4 2884s. Very, very, and there's a reason why their specs are very similar to the WP engines, because they were based on the same design. I'll get into that a little more at the end, but the Mesabi looked at those engines. They loved them so much, they literally copied the design. If you look at them from the front, the cab wall forward, they're almost dead ringers for the WP 2882s. So here's another way we can look at it. These are relative charts of WP engines with their, relative of their tractive effort, starting with the Baldwin 280s, the 460s, going on down the 2662s. And you can see the tall bar about 3/4 of the way to the right. That's the 2882s. And then you can see the second from the right bar. You can start to see one of the reasons why the steam engines weren't around, because that is the Western Pacific FTs. That's the diesels.
That was in what, lash-ups of 4?
That was in lash-ups of 4. For a 4-unit set, 228,000 pounds. So again, thinking of that in the context of the Canyon,
Right.
one crew.
Yeah.
One crew, 4 engines. Right?
And it answers the problem that originally why WP had made that 2882 is all of a sudden now answered with a modular set of engines.
Exactly. And they didn't need water.
Right.
They did need multiple crews, because you start getting into World War II, and we'll talk about this as we go along, but even the 2882s were outclassed.
Right.
And the WP was starting to multiple those. But also, too, you can kind of see, if you look at the dates, so that first set of 2882 shows up 1931, and the first FTs arrive on the railroad December 7th, 1941, no less. 10 years, and those 2882s were looking at their end.
Right.
And the last ones they got a second set. They got 6 and they got 4, and the second set only arrived in 38. So within 4 years, they were basically outclassed.
Right.
And that might be why they're not really preserved anywhere, huh?
Well, that and another reason. There will be another reason we'll get to. So here we go. The beginning of the ultimate Canyon killers, the diesels. 220,000. And again, to put it in context of 45-ton cars, that's 110 to 130 loaded cars up the canyon. And even a 2-unit set could outpull any steam engine on the WP other than those 2882s.
With one crew.
Yep. So there was one last set of articulateds, just to give the whole story of the WP and their engines. There was a last set of articulateds they got. So out on the east end of the railroad, they burned coal. Once you got past Winnemucca, they were burning coal. So here's one of their 280s set up as a coal burner. And they had some of the 282s out there burning coal. Well, they also got a set of 4664s. WP had Challengers. And those were about the only other engines that got close to the 2882s in terms of steam. And they were also faster. They had 70-inch drivers.
Okay.
Whereas the 2882s were slow engines. And that's one of the things, like we talked about the Big Boy. The Big Boy has such massive boiling power, big drivers. A Big Boy can go fast. It can haul a big train fast. If a WP 2882, the joke I heard, if a WP 2882 got above 30 miles an hour, it was because someone pushed it over the edge of the canyon.
Right.
So here we're back. Beautiful shot at the Ketty Depot of one of these big monsters. And I'll start going through some of the details and differences here, because it's interesting. You look at the front and they look busy as heck, but then you look down the engine and they're a fairly clean engine. And the two classes, despite them being built about 7 years apart, they were pretty similar. There were a few improvements in the last 4. The last 4 were actually 5 inches longer and about 7,000 pounds lighter. They tweaked some things. Here's a great chart I ran across. This was the degree of curvature it would take, how you would compensate, how it flexed. You can see this was an articulate. Yeah, you got the hinge there down the bottom, how the whole frame is hinging.
Yeah. Wow.
And again, I mentioned the high line with its 10-degree curves. These could take those 10-degree curves.
And it also shows the overhang of the boiler when the front truck goes truck. Do you call that a truck even?
Yeah, yeah, okay. The leading truck.
Okay, yeah, when that thing turns, look at how much that boiler's sticking out.
And remember, there's not only truck, you got a platform that's going with it. And you can look at this chart. I realize it's kind of hard to see here, but you'll see that A dimension on that lower left.
Yeah.
If you look in the chart, it will tell you how far the center line or the outer edge of the boiler is from that center line of that lead truck around the curve.
And with the way some of the tracks are on the canyon there, are you hanging out over nothing?
You are. You absolutely are. Again, some of the old steam guys I got to know when I first started volunteering board told, they talk about these guys. And they said the first time you ran one and you hit a hard curve in the canyon, you swore you were heading off the cliff.
Yeah,
you
just had to have faith and trust your engine that you were just following the curve and not derailing and heading off into the water.
Yeah, because you can see from that drawing that don't look right.
No, no. In fact, another story Jim Boynton told me, he had a new fireman who had not run one of the 2882s in the canyon, and they did a swing to the right. So Jim, the engineer is on the right, and he said all of a sudden he heard that fireman scream because he saw the front deck disappear, and all he saw was the boiler out over clear air. And then, of course, it started going.
And that's the only thing he heard about for the rest of his career.
Oh, my God, I thought we were going to go outside. So, yeah.
I'm just thinking what it must have smelled like in the cab.
Yeah. We got a sandbox for that. So here's the plan drawing, all the dimensions. Now, another interesting thing about these engines, you look at, again, let's look at the big boy. That's about 100 and I'm going off my memory here, but 134, 136 feet long. Right. The cab forwards, long engines. Those are very long engines.
They sure look long in the museum. In Sacramento.
And now I'm not going to say these aren't long, but you compare them to something like the big boy. It's only 120 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
WP was very specific about that. They had a max length they gave Baldwin on these.
Well, they get away with it with those smaller drivers too.
The smaller drivers, and they also, we'll see here in a minute, they did a very interesting thing with the front leading axle suspension. But something else, just we're looking at the plan drawing here. They put flange lubricators on the front driver. So this thing was self-lubricating on the track as it went along, which, they must have really needed that, because what's one of the last things, if you're trying to climb a grade with a heavy train, what's one of the last things you want?
Extra weight.
Extra grease.
Yes.
You do not want slippy on the rail, but they had flange lubricators.
Because they also don't want the rails wearing out.
Yep. And here's a real trip. So it's 120 foot long, about 75 feet, 80 feet of that is just the engine. The longest rigid wheelbase on these engines was only 11 feet.
That's remarkable.
Yeah. Beyond 11 feet, everything flexed.
So it must be the 11. Well, but it would be more than 11 feet between the front and rear driver, wouldn't it?
They had lateral devices in the leading and trailing axles. The trucks could actually the
wheels.
The leading and trailing drive axles could actually shift in their boxes side to side.
So they're not blind drivers, but they flex. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
And the rods would work with that.
Yes.
Wow.
That's an interesting engineering feat.
So here is one of my absolute favorite photos of these engines, because I love any photo that has the crew in it, but this really gives you an idea of the scale of these things. Look at that guy sitting there and how massive this engine is. But it also shows, I mentioned they did something really interesting with the front axle. Take a look right above the coupler. That is a leaf spring. That is the suspension for that front axle.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh,
I don't remember seeing that on the original presentation that I saw.
Yeah, Baldwin, they would usually use some other kind of suspension mechanism on their front trucks. But because of the length restriction, they had to get tricky. So they came up with this leaf spring arrangement to support that front truck, their front axle. Well, and then you can see a lot of the other details. Talked about controlling the train going down. You got two big cross compound air compressors up there.
Uh-huh.
And then that box, that kind of beveled box on either side of the headlight, that's the feed water heater.
Okay.
So, a lot of engines that would be up on the top. Some of this stuff might be on the side, like the air compressors. No, the WP put all this on the front, which gave them, I always thought it gave them just a really no nonsense, get out of my way appearance.
Yeah, it looks like it's all business.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine me like walking down the tracks and one of these guys comes out a tunnel at you?
Well, Eugene, I wouldn't be walking on the tracks. I'm just saying.
And that is your Operation Lifesaver endorsement for the day.
You wouldn't be setting up your camera there either.
I
would
definitely would not be setting up the camera there. I do not want to be yelled at.
So,
I mean, look at the craftsmanship that has to go into that.
oh yeah,
And then compare that to your basically templating out diesels in 1941.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a work of art. Having to bang out all of those tiny pieces. Well, tiny.
Well, yeah. There's nothing tiny on a steam engine.
Yeah.
It's a lot of detail parts, so in HO scale.
Yeah.
I've seen some of these on actually Jim Diaz's layout. I don't know if you've seen that in person, Murph, but he has engines like this on his layout, and they're just really gorgeous.
So here's another shot. Beautiful, beautiful front view. I believe this was probably taken right after they were delivered or at the Baldwin plant. This is the second to the last one, the 259. And here you'll notice some. It's a little bit in shadow, but I mentioned those springs up front. This is part of the second one. You notice there's two of them now. What it turned out, although the spring arrangement worked very, very well, it was too much stress for the single elliptical spring and yoke system they had. They started cracking.
Oh.
So when they got the slightly improved ones,
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the major changes, is they went to two springs suspending that leading axle.
I would think in theory that would cut down the stress by half, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
that makes a lot of sense, because that doesn't look like it's something that's easy to get to if you have to shop it.
No, and there was not a lot of room. I mean, again, you see the feed water heater is basically built around it. There was not a lot of space. So they to try and shoehorn that in even further, they really needed it. So just a nice show. This is one at Ketty. You can see they got some stock cars behind it. I mentioned they were designed to also go up the high line, the 2.2%. They didn't do it often. The 2662s and the 282s were pretty much the common engines up there until later in their career. When the diesels started taking over the Canyon, then you started seeing the biggest use of these guys up the high line.
Uh-huh.
But it was still pretty rare. And I'm aware of very few photographs of these. With the high line is remote, it's very rarely photographed even today. So there's not too many shots of them doing that. So getting into some technical details. Now we're down here in the yard in Orville. And that's actually something else. I keep talking about the Canyon, but yeah, I want to emphasize most of their service took place between Orville and Portola, which, talk about them being unknown, talk about them being a little documented. That's another reason. They were confined to that very small area. They weren't like the big boys or the cab Ford. The cab Fords, you could see them on most of the SP. The big boys, less so in context, the whole UP system, but still, they had a pretty broad range they worked, and they went into some big cities.
Right.
You'd see them in Salt Lake. You'd see them in Cheyenne. They're running between Orville and Portola.
It's kind of remote, really, even now.
Yeah.
So that does make a lot of sense. I didn't really think of it that way.
Yeah, they're it's not like they were going through the middle of Stockton or Sacramento.
Right.
Unless they were going for service, they would get serviced in Sacramento if they had big maintenance going on.
Even then, back then, those were still much smaller places than they are now. So, that's still still remote, I think, in my opinion.
So their boiler pressure, 250 pounds on their boiler pressure. They were always oil burners. That was their max pressure. Their normal working pressure was 235 pounds. The boiler, so the main barrel of the boiler was 104 inches in diameter. So just under 10 feet. It's a little over 9 foot, a little under 10 foot. And their heating area was almost 7,000 square feet. So think about that in terms, a good way to measure that think about that kind of space is like a house. John, what's the square footage of your house? Do you know?
13 something.
Right. Almost 7,000 square feet.
6 times what I got.
Of just heating area.
That's a lot.
Wow.
So now here's a great place they were photoed. This is the roundhouse at Ketty, the little roundhouse. A lot of great photos of those engines there. Here's another photo I love because, again, just the context. Those kids, I wonder if they thought back on this years later and went, remember that time Mom took a picture of us on that big steam engine?
They might have remembered that.
Yeah, but I mean, again, take a look. That first walkway up to the air compressor is as tall as the taller boy.
Oh, yeah.
It's taller than him.
Yeah, it's just a little bit taller than him. It's like. Now here's another shot to get the size. You zoom in there, and this is taken at the Baldwin plant, and you can see the man standing under the cab.
Right.
I mean, this cab is about as tall height-wise as the big boy cab. If you've stood next to it and looked up at the crew and all that, this is of a similar height.
It looks to me like the engine itself is probably 15 or
it's about
feet.
It's a little
tall.
over 15 feet tall.
Yeah.
So, and some of the auxiliary things they put on it. These engines, of course, were superheated, as most modern engines were. They used Type A superheaters, and they were very large ones. They had 75 heating elements in it. There was over 2,000. There was over 2,100 square feet of heating area just in the superheater.
Wow, more than the house.
Yeah. And they needed that because, again, these were not compounds. They were not true mallets. These were simple engines. So you weren't taking your steam, using them in those back cylinders, and then using it in the front one again. It was one-time use, and that steam was gone. So if you're trying to haul something, you're trying to get something started, and you need your maximum force, you better have a lot of steam on tap. Otherwise, you were dead. You had to wait to build up your pressure again. And from everything I heard and all my research, they were exceptionally well-steaming engines. Until World War II, when they started beating the stuffing out of them. So here you got some nice details showing the cylinders.
Yeah.
They had a diameter of 26 inches and a stroke of 32 inches. It was the same for all 4 of them. And here it's kind of hard to see in context, but you can actually see some of the equipment of that booster engine.
Oh, down at the bottom there. Yeah.
Yeah. So around you can see some of the control hardware, the upper right. There's some other equipment in there. I unfortunately I don't have a really good shot of it outside the engine. I wish I did, but that was basically a little steam turbine going in there.
Right. And then did it attach to the axle?
Yes.
It
was geared up to the axle.
Okay. Yeah.
And that gave you starting rating was 14,000 extra pounds of start. And again, in my research, very few articulateds were ever built with boosters. There's nothing that made these engines unusual.
Did anybody ever try running a booster under the tender?
Yes. Yes, there are steam engines out there that had, and ones I've seen, I don't know if this was common, but I've seen ones where you literally had a little drawbar between 2 of the axles.
Oh, really?
So one was powered and then you had a drawbar to another one. Yeah.
Coincidentally, but well, yeah, by design, but awesome.
So now here's an interesting view, because this is in South San Francisco when this is WP260 and it's going to scrap, sadly. But you'll notice the front end is not what you expect on most steam engines.
Yeah, it's just a big plate.
It's a big plate, and then you usually have that circular plate in the front that hinges out. Well, there is an inspection plate here with hinges. You can see there are hinges, but it's a rectangular one. And part of the reason they did that is you see those 2 brackets on either side. They needed that space for mounting the air compressors.
Right.
all
So
that hardware.
yeah, so it was not a case of they decided to put those compressors there later. They designed these engines from the beginning. The compressors are going to be up front, and they made that inspection hole the shape they did to work around the air compressors.
So
everything on these engines were thought out.
Yeah, I've seen the 4449 opened up for boiler work and that kind of thing. So that little hatch is big enough for a guy to go through?
Yes.
Oof.
Now, if you needed to do a lot of work, you took that whole front plate off.
Okay.
But if you were just going in to do an inspection or some light work, yeah, you went through that little door.
It looks like it's at least 3 feet based on what that kid looked like on it.
That's true.
Or pretty close to 3 feet.
And again, remember that diameter is about 9.5 feet.
Yeah, we need a dime for scale.
Yeah. Now, another fun thing you can see here is look up where the stack is.
Uh-huh.
That was a blast deflector, basically. These things would underload, they would put out such force that they could actually damage like
anything
the roof of the tunnel.
Right.
So they would have these deflectors they could close over it.
They just installed something like that on the big boy for this trip that they're on. Remember that
Really?
talk? Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a talk, and we should actually let me plug that video real quick here, because there's a whole talk of Ed Dickens. It was for the Western Pacific Railroad Museum's, I guess, benefit, right? That little talk he did that night. And that might also be, I think you were on that very briefly when he was making fun of your nickname.
Yeah, I didn't know your name was Eugene.
Yeah. So you can see a talk that Ed Dickens gave about the big boy and big steam in his career, and a whole bunch of really great stories here on this channel. It came out, I think, sometime last month, and that's worth looking at. I think I called it Big Steam Insights or something like that. It's a
it was awesome.
Yeah, very interesting presentation. But anyway, let's continue with this Western Pacific stuff, because this is cool.
So you mentioned tunnels a mile long. How bad was it riding on one of these through one of those tunnels?
From what the old steam guys told me, brutal.
Yeah.
Absolutely brutal. They actually had respirators that they could put on, but the respirators drew off the brake tanks. And if you know anything, if you're really familiar with how railroad air brakes work, one of the things that is in the air is oil, because it lubricates everything.
As it shoots down there.
Now, they had oil traps apparently on these respirators that didn't work. In fact,
how good did that work?
One of the guys said we long suspected that the filters were actually oil soluble.
Okay.
So you'd slap one of these guys on, and most of the time you weren't getting air, you were getting hot oil infiltrated air. And so it was hot gases and steam and smoke
particulates, etc.
and particulates, or inhaling oil.
That sounds horrible.
Apparently what a lot of the guys would do is they would just soak a rag. They always had water in the cab. They'd soak a rag, they'd wrap, and then they would literally get down on the floor.
That makes sense.
The longer tunnels.
Yeah. Wow.
So this is, I love this photo because it's such an exceptionally clear photo. We lose a little detail with the stuff up on the front, but you can see, again, this is one of the later ones. It's got the 2 elliptical springs up front. You can see the feed water heater. You can see all the stuff on the front, the deflectors, all that side piping. Just like I mentioned earlier, these engines always struck me as having a busy, aggressive appearance. Much more so than a lot of other WP Power or other railroads.
We're not here to be pretty.
Exactly.
It's not a streamliner.
No, not by any means. So those big air compressors, because and they needed that. I mentioned going downhill. They needed tremendous air capacity to retard these trains going downhill.
Right.
So that's why they had these 2, and it's kind of hard to tell how big they are, but those are massive air compressors up there.
They look like they're 5 feet tall.
That they probably are,
at least. And there's 2 of them.
So another thing that's kind of oddball to me. There were only 10 of these engines, but there was different appliances on a lot of them. So like among 10 engines, there were 3 different types of feed water heaters used, which you'd think a railroad would want to standardize, but the WP was always kind of looking like what's going to work the best.
Right.
So in this case, what we're looking at is a coffin feed water heater. And there's a lot of stuff you're not seeing with the feed water heater inside the smoke box, but you've got the big elements up front around the springs. And the ones that came in 1938, those all had coffins. In the 1931 group, the first two had Worthington heaters, and then the 253s, the 253, the 256, so the other four used Alesco feed water heaters. And it was all just a different design, different setup for different companies. The coffins work pretty well. From accounts I've researched, the coffins work pretty well. What the guys really liked was the Alescos. Everything I've ever read, the Alesco feed water heaters, they gave you water, they didn't screw up, they always worked, they were bulletproof. The Worthingtons, the crews hated them. For some reason, something about the design of them, they would get clogged with scale. The water often was not the greatest, and they'd clog up on you. And as you can imagine, it's like, oh boy, I'm running out of steam. I got to get some water in. All right, where's the water? Where's the water? Oh no.
Wow.
So another great shot with people for the scale.
Descale the.
You would have to get in and descale the inner workings of the feed water heater.
I know how to do it on my coffee maker. That'd take a whole bunch of vinegar.
Yeah. get in there with a little pipe cleaner.
That's right. Yeah. Oh man. And while you're on the road, you got to do something. Okay.
Well, at that point, you probably weren't doing it on the road. You were probably just forget it. We're done.
Okay.
We're done.
Shop it.
Yeah, shop it.
Okay.
We're gonna limp into Ketty, and you guys worry about it.
Right.
Or we're gonna drift downhill to Oroville.
Okay.
So this is a great one. I've been talking a little bit about all the equipment like up front. And again, that was very, very deliberately done. You'll notice how relatively clean. There's not a lot of things sticking out on the side of this engine.
Yeah.
And that was deliberately done because they didn't want things that could get snagged.
Right.
They wanted to,
with rocks.
If a rock came down, now if you plowed in there from the front, that was one thing.
Yeah.
But they really didn't want. Could you imagine if but one of your air compressors on the side and a rock slide came down and tore off your air compressor?
I was noticing too that the front bumper or whatever there is about as yeoman looking as it could be.
Yeah, that front pilot, that is just a big old chunk of steel.
Yeah.
It is rock gone.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's not much of a plow, or like some people still call the cow catcher.
Right.
There ain't much of one there. It is just rocks. Get away.
That'll kick some little rocks.
Yeah.
But the one that's going to ram into a boulder, yeah, that's going to hold up pretty good.
Look how small those dudes look next to it too.
Oh,
yeah.
They're not even up to the top of the cylinder set.
Yeah.
And another reason they kept it clean, again, we're talking about an almost 10-foot diameter boiler there. Visibility.
Oh, sure.
You needed to be, you've got about 65 feet of boiler in front of you, and you're watching for rocks. You're watching for slides. You want to see what's up ahead of you. You wanted nothing in the way, in your field of view.
Distracting, yeah.
So again, as I researched it, I discovered there was nothing random on these engines. It was very, very deliberately done.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about like the tunnels and all that. There actually was a discussion, and I think we've got some of the details of this in the archives in Portola, and I think it occurred in the mid-30s or the late 30s. But there was discussion after they saw the cab forwards over on the SP of, hey, since these are so miserable in the tunnels, let's rebuild these as cab forwards.
We could do that too. Yeah.
And the crews, to put it mildly, were not in favor. In fact, their reaction, I've been told, was violent hell no. And again, this all goes back to
big rocks. Good idea. So
many things about the Western Pacific and the Fifth River Canyon comes back to rocks.
Yeah.
And they again, Jim Boynton said, we were going to put up with not seeing. We were going to put up with choking because if we hit a rock, we wanted that boiler out in front of us.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And that big honking piece of metal.
Yeah. They wanted all that mass
Right.
if they were going to nail a rock slide.
Okay.
So yeah, from what I understand, it wasn't even, oh, that might be a good idea. It was, they went to the cruise and the cruise went, no.
The original long hood forward.
Yes. Which is also, interestingly, one of the reasons the WP really liked high noses. It's the way they got their high nose G20s.
Okay.
Was protection.
Right.
In fact, they even I'm getting a little sidetrack here, but it does relate.
Right.
What very few people know is they even ordered Jeep 30s with high noses. And again, the whole idea was protection from the rocks in the canyon.
Right. Wow.
So they did experiment with other ways to keep from, choking the guys. 1947, they on this engine right here, 251, the very first of them, they devised a blower system that would actually, instead of feeding off the brake line, it would actually pull air from under the engine.
You better.
And it would force it into the cab. And it got rid of the smoke issues, but as one of these engines is heading its way up or down the canyon, it's kicking up dust and dirt and everything, and it wasn't very well filtered, apparently. And so you'd turn it on, and have you ever driven your car in like a dust storm and then turned on your air conditioner?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Same thing. Apparently you turn on, it was like,
was there no such thing as scuba gear back then? Oh, okay.
No. But it had to have one of those deep sea things with the big helmet.
Yeah, that's a bit much. And that's still using outside air.
Yep.
Fresh. Well, as fresh as it is. Wow.
So here, beautiful builder shot.
That is.
Baldwin. This is the second to last of them, 259. So you're talking about the tenders earlier, Murph.
Mm-hmm.
On the original 6, the tenders carried 22,000 gallons of water. And to give you an idea how well they got that target when they thought about it, when they did the last 4, they only increased the capacity 1,000 gallons.
Okay. So a really good estimate.
Yeah, so there was a really good estimate. In terms of oil, 6,000 gallons of oil. So you were doing about, for every gallon of oil you burned, you were consuming a little under 4 gallons of water.
Right.
So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, they tried to do 2 water stops. Sometimes they did 3. They typically took on water. So if we're going up the hill, they typically took on water at Merlin, which was the station about halfway up to Ketty, and then at Ketty itself. And on average, with a 3,600-ton train coming out of Oroville, by the time they hit Portola, they had sucked down 40,000 gallons of water.
It's thirsty.
Yeah.
So if you're starting on a grade, do you actually back up to give yourself some slack, or do you start pulling with everything tight?
You actually want to take your slack out.
Okay.
So you'll kind of, if you've got any slack in your train, you'll want to creep forward a little bit, because if you just go,
right,
you'll suddenly hit
You'll break your
coupler. You can break a coupler, or just the shock of it will break your adhesion.
Okay.
And now you're spinning drivers.
Yeah.
And can you imagine one of these big guys spinning drivers? I'd love to actually see a video of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ed, we need a video of the big boy spinning all of them. Do a 16-wheel Bernie. How about it?
Yeah.
Rail burnout.
Let's put some ammonia down there.
All right.
So they generally were engines that they did their job very well. They worked very well. As they aged, they became a bit of a pain to work on. And what I've found and what I've heard in interviewing guys years past, what was really tough is during World War II, they're moving so much traffic, they overloaded these engines, and they would leak steam from every joint. The burners you'd start getting incomplete combustion, so you got raw oil coming out of the stack in some cases. I read an account by one guy. He got off a very badly overloaded 251 in Portola, having had a hellish trip up the canyon.
Uh-huh.
And he saw himself in a mirror, and he literally, where he had been wearing his glasses, was the only place on him that was not covered in oil and soot.
Right.
He said, I looked like the reverse of a raccoon.
Right. Yeah. Basically, they've blown all the seals.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
everything was a mess. One of the interesting things I always thought, there was lubrication joints that were really hard to reach. The idea of like ergonomics and working on these things, it wasn't a concept then. So the roundhouse crews, they usually got their maintenance in Oroville, unless they need something really heavy, they go down to Sacramento, and they get light work in Portola and Ketty sometimes. But the roundhouse crews in Oroville actually had a whole bunch of homemade devices and tools for reaching these hard to find places, packing the joints.
Those two front and rear on each truck that have to slide back and forth. That's got to be a special place to reach.
And your flexible steam lines.
Yeah.
You've got your flexible steam lines. They've got like a universal joint in them.
Mm-hmm.
So they developed all these little special tools for getting in there and making sure they could lube them and fix them and pack the grease in them. And
wow.
So there was apparently a whole section in Oroville Roundhouse that was just the big womp tools. So just a nice shot of the Portola Roundhouse here. This, of course, today, this is the location of the Western Pacific Railroad Museum. Shout out, you can see in the upper left there are unfortunately long gone Western Pacific Hospital. Thank you to the arsonist who burned it down. But it does show one thing. They installed 120-foot turntables in Portola and Oroville just for turning these engines. And although one of the engines doesn't survive, the Western Pacific Museum does own the Oroville turntable. Wow. We do own it, and there are long-term hopes to one day build a replica roundhouse and actually install the Oroville turntable.
Wow.
And there is one piece of the WP turntable here that survives. You see the little controlled doghouse just in the front of the engine?
Yeah.
That survives.
Where
you can see that in Portola. It is sitting on a motor car flat, and it is actually the little shed that all the track tools are stored in. That is the controlled doghouse for the Portola turntable that you see here in the photo.
Sweet.
And interestingly, the Oroville turntable is missing its doghouse. So if we ever rebuild it, we're going to merge the two together.
You got the parts.
Yes, we have the parts.
Parts is parts.
So this is a fascinating photo. I've often wanted this. This had to have been some kind of inspection trip, because if you look, there's only a caboose and a passenger car behind the 252 here. This is in Oroville. This is the depot in Oroville. And this has got to be some kind of special charter or an inspection train, because that's the only reason I could think they have just two little cars behind this monster engine. Or maybe they were testing it. It looks fairly new and clean here. So that's been another thing I thought is maybe this was just, hey, let's try out our new engine.
Do you know what year this was in?
No, I do not actually. My guess, and looking at how clean the engine is probably 1932.
Yeah, I don't know were they doing rail van excursions really much back then? Because that's really what that business car looks like.
An inspection car.
What
train.
Yeah, what it might be, if it isn't an inspection train, it might have been something for like politicians or shippers.
I was going to say officers or a business special.
The photographer for this shot is amazing. The contrast in this shot and everything else is just perfect.
One of the things I do for Portola, I've got a lot of experience in Photoshop and retouching photos, and I'm one of just many guys there who do that. And honestly, the original scan of this shot, I didn't have to do a thing.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a beautiful photograph.
Yeah. Well, there are some sins you cannot fix, and that clearly had everything in it.
Yeah.
That's what's so amazing.
There's a little defect right above the engineer side marker line.
Yeah.
There's a little defect in the negative.
Yeah.
But I just went, forget it, I'm leaving it. It's just one of those artifacts. Yeah, you see the little vertical line right there? This here? Yep, that's a little defect in the negative. So, although usually passenger trains in the canyon were handled by originally the 460s, and then the 282s, and then of course later the 484s and the 482s, there were some times. Well, here's one of the 482s going over Rock Creek Trestle, the X-Florida East Coast engines, and of course the 484s, in some ways, it's like I always viewed these GS64s and the WP280s. Those were kind of the twin epitomes of WP steam power.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, these really a design associated with the SP.
Right.
So the WP282s, you know, they were so involved in the design that to me that's kind of their apex of the power. But there were times when the 2882s were in fact photographed on passenger trains. This is a freight train on Ketty here, but there are photos out there of, especially during World War II, these massive troop trains,
right,
with 2882s up front. Including there's a great one that we got recently in the archives of Portola. That like the first 10 cars are those little Pullman troop sleeper boxcars, basically. Right. And they're right. It's actually on Ketty, a little further to the right from where this photo was taken. But there's a whole string of those little 40-foot troop sleepers, and then some regular passenger cars. It's clearly a troop train. But yeah, during World War II, again, the way they rated these, like 3,600 tons, was they would handle that pretty nice. There's records of trains up to 4,000 tons being assigned a single 251 class. Massively overloaded them. They did it, but it hurt them. And here's a, very few shots like deep in the canyon. But here's a wonderful, wonderful photo. This is, I'm pretty sure this is near Polga. And you can see that train continues off around that corner. This is a really long train.
This looks like it's up the canyon a bit from Polga, if I had to guess.
Yeah, a little bit up that way.
Imagine the person who took this. I think of this because I have to do shots like this sometimes. This is where they didn't have drones back then. I could get the shot with the drone now.
Yeah.
Just fly it out across the canyon a bit and look back. Now, some dude had to be like a mountain goat. Jeez.
So if you were going uphill and you had the typical train, 3,300, 3,400, 3,600 tons, from the information I've seen, you could pretty comfortably do 18 miles an hour uphill. So a train that size uphill, about 18 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Not fast, but you're moving.
Right.
Overloaded it to about 4,000 tons, and you were down, like you were doing good to do 12 miles an hour.
Right.
So now imagine you've got over 110 miles of railroad, continuous 1% grade, like we talked about.
Yep.
And you're doing 10 miles an hour.
That's a long drive.
And you've got to stop for water. And if you're overloaded, you're stopping 3 times.
Yeah.
Some of these crews did some long days on those engines. So just a nice shot here in Ketty, coming through one of the switches. When you had an overloaded train like that, they tried not to put on helpers. Again, there was the whole logistical thing on that. And one thing that apparently was extremely rare is if something with a 251 on it needed a helper, they tended not to put another big articulated on it. They would tend to put one of the 282s. Or at times, again, I understand they had as many as 2 or 3 additional 282s with one of these guys.
They tie them all in up front?
No, depending on the type of train and how long it was, they might be on the tail, they might be in the mid.
Okay.
And if you had a really heavy train, you could take on water 5 or 6 times going up the canyon.
Wow.
And you might need to stop in Ketty for crude.
Okay.
And again, if you got a train that heavy and you got 2, 3 other engines on it, you've all got to water up and you've all got to oil up.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you are, hey, we're dead in Ketty. We can't make it to Portola. Good night.
Yeah.
So this is up in Portola.
Two water tanks?
Or no, I'm sorry. This isn't Portola. This is Oroville. I'm sorry. This is Oroville. And yeah, they had Ketty had 2 water tanks and Oroville had 2 water tanks. And yeah, one of the things when they were overloaded, they tended to spit. They would smoke really bad. That was just something they discovered. If you overloaded one of these engines, they would smoke like crazy. and you'd get gobs of heated but unburned oil come flying out of the stack and coming back at you.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Don't hang out the window.
No. So another shot, you know, nice smoke coming out there. But yeah, they powerful exhaust too, like I mentioned earlier. You would also, something that would happen with these guys in the tunnels. Remember, most of what's coming out of that stack is steam, is
Right.
water vapor. Now, you're in a tunnel.
And it's cool
And it's cool inside the tunnel. So what is that hot steam doing? It's condensing.
Yes.
So you see, we're coming out of a tunnel here. And if you were really hauling up that grade and you hit, especially that long one, and you start condensing all this water, and especially if it's a cold day, it's raining, and that's getting on the rails. And these things, if it was enough, you had enough condensation going and you were going slow enough, these things would break loose in a second.
Oh man.
And the drivers would spin like mad. You could actually lose all 8 axles.
Right.
And spin it like crazy. And now, have you guys ever seen a steam engine when it loses adhesion and it spins out? Have you ever seen what happens with what comes out of the stack?
Oh, yeah, lots of nice smoke.
Yeah, lots of nice smoke. You start overdoing the draft. You get black smoke. So especially if they were overloaded and you got that gunk coming out, you got
what a mess.
smoke, and now suddenly you've broken free, and now you got even more crap coming out of the engine. The engine is stopped. It's not moving. It's spinning like crazy, and you're stuck in a tunnel and you're gassing yourself.
Yeah.
So what you're doing, the way this was described to me one time is you're on the ground. The engineer is on the ground reaching up for the controls. One hand is on the sander. He is dumping as much sand as he possibly can, hoping he's pulled the throttle back.
And he's going to finesse it now.
Yeah, and he's hoping he catches traction.
Yeah.
If they couldn't, you mentioned like backing up.
Yeah.
If they couldn't, they literally would back up out of the tunnel.
Wow.
They would just drift back.
Right.
Get a stop, get control of themselves, catch their breath, and then try it again. And there were times, there's documented times where that might happen 3 or 4 times.
Oh. Imagine coming out the other side of the tunnel, how happy you'd feel.
Oh,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So do they ever, if they're spinning, they ever had time where they ground the rails down into the little dippy things?
I've never heard of that with these engines, but I have heard of that happening.
Yeah.
And I have heard stories about there were certain areas in the canyon that you could feel scalloping in the rails because it was a place where they would slip out regularly.
Wow.
So now, as they got older, again, their early years, beautiful working engines and very robustly built. But as they got older, they did start to develop what today we would talk about is stress fractures. And particularly in the front engine, as they refer to it, that front set of 4 axles, the frames began coming apart on some of them. They would crack, the welds would fracture, the castings would fracture.
That means they ran them too hard.
Yeah, and again, that was a lot of this stress was put on during World War II. It was just like we'll worry about fixing them later, shove the traffic over the railroad. And like in particular, I've seen notes where on the number 1 and number 2 drive axles, the supports for those axles would like fracture and come apart.
Right.
And in some cases break completely off the frame. Now again, we're having fun talking about, okay, you spin out, you lose traction. Now imagine you're trying to go up or down the canyon and suddenly your number 1 axle is completely broken off your frame.
Yeah.
Sounds like bad news.
So here we have WP252. She was the very first of the 282s to enter service. It was August 4th, 1931. And they were all set up for service in Portola. So they came in from Philadelphia They got hauled dead and trained to Portola, and that's where they were set up for service. The last of the engines was the WP. The last of the original set to be received was WP 256. That arrived a little over a month later and was set up September 9th, 1931. And as I mentioned at the top, for 10 years, they were the kings of the railroad. And then the first of the FTs showed up, and the future was written.
I bet the crews actually really appreciated those diesels after dealing with all those problems with
In a lot of ways,
tunnels. And
in
such.
a lot of ways, they did. It, you know, again, some of these old guys I was so lucky to get to meet and talk to.
Yeah,
They loved steam. They
Right.
loved steam, but boy, you really get them talking, and they would admit, you know what? There are times I'm so happy I'm in a diesel. If it's snowing, if it's a super hot day, if I'm going through a tunnel,
yeah,
I'm glad I'm in a diesel. So again, World War II, while it played a big role in wearing these engines out, it was also what kept them around as long as they could. If it was up to the WP, so they got their first 12 FTs. The first were delivered December 7, 1941.
right.
If it was up to the WP, they would have just kept buying FTs.
Right.
They want as many as they get their hands on. But the War Production Board went, no. You know, we got a stool for this war. You make do. That's of course how they ended up with the 484s diverted
Right.
from the SP. So what that meant is you had another 9 years until 1950 before
These started going
they
away.
really started going away in the canyon.
Right.
You know, they'd start appearing less and less, you know, when you got into the late 40s, but they were still pulling some miles. But then by, you know, 49, 50, WP had enough diesels. They were starting to get the F7s now,
Right.
and they could dieselize the canyon. That's, again, where more and more they were being used on the High Line compared to earlier. And you just started seeing them parked. Here's one that looks fairly complete, the 253, but you notice her heralds are gone. She's heading off to the scrapper. You can also see like the main, not the side rods, but the main drive rod has been pulled. She's off in South San Francisco. So you can see that the rod is actually up on the platform,
Yeah,
up on the walkway.
right up
there.
on next to the boiler there.
Here's a little bit of a murky shot, but what I like about this one is it's pulling a reefer block. You know, exactly what it was designed around, pulling a
Right.
continuous unit train of reefers. And the FTs. Eventually they had 48 of these, and when they started getting the first, the F7s, that was it. WP, this is known among the WP fans, first of the big railroads on the West Coast to say sayonara to steam. They looked at the diesels and they never went back.
Well, and they had the conditions that pretty much favored them
Yeah, they did.
from the sound of things.
But of course, the 2882s were not going to go quietly. This is actually one of the few photos that I have of a 2882 on the High Line. This is on the High Line at Robbers Creek. And yeah, you can see the FT came out the worst of this this little cornfield mate. Interestingly, though, both engines, this is 1947 this happens. This is very late for the 2882s, but the 253 here would be put back into service.
Mm-hmm.
It would run for another 3 years. So the 258 here, interestingly, part of the second set, this was the first one to be retired. June 1949, it was only 11 years old.
Wow, that's a lot of material for something that only ran for 11 years.
Yep. So 1950, that was the last hurrah for steam in the canyon. It was going to be diesels. And interestingly, again, the last two that were running, one of the 38 built ones, the 259, and the very first, the 251. They were the last two in operation. So the first shall be last.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually, you know, they were all scrapped, but there are some pieces that survive, including something I am very, very thrilled we have in the collection in Portola. A very wonderful member donated one of the builder's plates off the 251 to us.
Oh, that's
it's
nice.
it's on display in the archives room.
Right.
We also have the number plate off. I believe it's the 252 and 2 of the class lights.
Cool.
So I keep joking with the guys. Look, we've got a builder's plate. We got class lights and number plate. We've almost got a new one built.
I was going to say, you just need a metal fabricator.
So here again, another one. By May 1952, they were all retired. The oldest had only been around for 20 years. So even the longest serving one only had 20 years. Another reason why they were so poorly documented. Now, a few years ago, we were digging through some records in the archives of the museum, and we discovered that the WP tried to give one of these away.
Oh,
they did have a lot of pride in them, and they wanted to save one. They just put in a park somewhere. And we know they offered one to Oroville. We know they offered one to Portola, and we think there were a couple other towns. Quincy might have been one. Which, boy, running one of these down the Quincy Railroad would have been hilarious. And they all said no, because they were so big. Nobody wanted to mess with one that was this large. And so they were gone.
that's
They all
too
went to
bad.
scrap. So the little Malleys would actually outlive the big Womps. There was an earthquake down in Tehachapi. I believe it was 52. A lot of traffic got diverted off the Tehachapi line, went over the SP and the WP. So you even saw, this is actually Niles Canyon right here. This is near Sunol. You got one of the WP little Womps in Sunol. But they didn't last much longer. And that was it. The Canyon Killers were gone. And they only survive in these photos. And hopefully now the memory of the folks who have gotten to hear this. I hope appreciate them. Now there is an interesting survival. I mentioned this very up in the beginning, and that is the Duluth, Mesabi, and Iron Range. In 1937-38, they were looking for new engines, and they took a look at the WP 251s, and they went, "This is perfect." So they went to Baldwin, and they basically copied the design. If you actually were to overlay one of the WP engines with this one and just take away the all-weather cab and the tender, they are almost identical engines. And the reason they became 2884s is because they put that all-weather cab on it.
And that's coal-fired, right?
Yes, and they're coal-fired. But I mean, we've been seeing a lot of pictures of the front of those 251s. Right? Look at that.
Yeah.
If I told you, if you didn't know, and you just seen all those pictures,
It looks like the same front end.
Yeah, and I told you this was a WP 2882 in a park, you'd probably believe me.
Right.
I'd only believe you because it was you telling me that.
So 3 of these guys survive. They're the closest things to the WP 2882s in existence today.
Same feed water heater placement.
Same feed water,
else.
same equipment arrangement,
Springs.
same diameters, same pistons, same cylinder setup. Basically, other than the all-weather cab and the 4-axle trailing and the tender and the fuel, they're pretty much the same engine.
Right.
Some modernization tweaks, but they're pretty much the same engines.
Yeah.
So we'll close here with just beautiful builder's shot in Philadelphia, the 259 getting ready to get shipped out. And again, we can see our little friend from earlier standing there, looking like a Lego figure next to this monstrous guy.
Well, there it is.
So, hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
That was great.
we'll keep this up on the screen so people have a good chance to see the dedications and all that. And I mentioned, at least on screen a minute ago, if anybody has any questions, it's such a comprehensive or a thorough explanation.
Yeah,
of it. I can't
honestly,
think of
I am sure there was a ton more. I keep researching these engines, and I'd love to get into the Baldwin archives because I'm sure there's a bunch more stuff that I just don't know.
Yeah, that's great though. And I hope that people now, after seeing that, can see why I was so impressed when I saw this the first time, because it's just a great, I think, thorough look at sort of to me, it was unknown. WP fans out there are going like, well, were you living under a rock or something? But as someone who's just casually interested and not a hardcore WP foamer, I was surprised even to hear that, that they were stronger tractive effort wise.
Well, and even a lot of the WP fans I've run across don't know how powerful and how unusual these engines were.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually seen people write little things about them. They go, oh, they were just copies of a USRA design. No, they weren't anything like a USRA design. They were very custom, very special. And what I really thought was so cool was when I stumbled across the information of how very specifically they were designed for the Canyon.
That's the thing that was most impressive to me. It's why these things were built the way they were. What problems were they trying to solve? And I can see it's pretty different from many other railroads.
Yes.
We really like to geek out over this much traffic effort and the drivers were this big, but the front end placement and why you've got to worry about the rocks and how you go through tunnels, all of that
visibility,
stuff.
Why all the equipment was up front.
Yes.
That is the interesting part, is the why behind it.
Yeah.
Because you look at the pictures of it and you're like, oh yeah, why is all that stuff, or oh look, all that stuff is on the front.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just look at a picture or look at a scaled down model of it or whatever, you just think, oh, that's kind of cool, but you don't know anything reason why it was like that.
Well,
so
and another thing is if you look at historians of steam, you look at how steam engines evolved over their time, even ones that didn't have long service lives. Well, like a great example, I'll pick an example from the WP. They're 2662s. When they were first built, all this stuff was on the side. The fronts were very clean, very bald.
Right.
And then stuff moved around. Even something like the Southern Pacific GSs, equipment moved around. The big boys, equipment moved around. These didn't move around. They did this very, very deliberate design
at the beginning,
and they really didn't change.
They seem to think it through very well. The other amazing thing to me is the clear reason why we would move over to the diesels as soon as possible.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, because those actually solve the problem better that they set out to build these things for.
Absolutely. They could haul more, with less people, not having to stop for water, you had more adhesion to the rail because you had
all those wheels track. Yeah.
I love steam engines, but you're absolutely right. You especially compare them off like this, and you can see why the WP was going like, hey, no, give us more.
Yeah.
Give us more.
Yeah. And not to knock these, they were for their time a great answer.
You know what I'm thinking though, as the discussion's winding forward here, to me, I think to myself, Western Pacific seemed like a very forward-thinking company, meaning this is so carefully designed. Obviously, it didn't change, so they put a lot of forethought right into this. They were among the first to adopt the diesels.
Mm-hmm.
So they had all this really smart sort of, it seems like, business acumen. And to think that they were one of the first of the fallen flags that UP gobbled up, it seems like they were smarter than that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else. I don't know even know how I'm trying to.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. It's one of the things. Being, I do a lot of dosening up in Portola. Because I'm a big believer in that, especially when you have the public that, I like trains, but they don't know. Unless you explain the things to them and share the stories, it's just a hunk of metal. I hate to say it. I know a lot of people are going like, "Oh my God, no, my beloved." Da, 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 da. No, it is. It is just a chunk of metal,
Right.
or you get older, chunk of wood that has no meaning to people unless you know the story. And one of the things I talk about with the Western Pacific, trying to explain what I find so cool about the railroad, is it had this very weird split personality. And that in many ways, you're right. It was a very forward-thinking railroad. And you see that we were talking about at the beginning how it was built. Beautifully surveyed, beautifully engineered. I mean, one of the best engineered lines. I mean, right up there with, people talk about how well engineered like the Pennsy or the Milwaukee Road was. Really, you look at the specs on the WP line, it was right up there with that. And then what did they equip it with? Knockoffs of older power.
Right. But they learned from that.
They did learn from it. But again, it was part of that split personality. They could be very cutting edge.
Yeah.
But then they would also hang on to things long after it had gone away on other railroads. I mean, they were one of the last railroads on the West Coast that was still using wood cabooses.
Huh.
Of course, famously, they had F units long after everyone else got rid of F
That's
units.
true. Yeah, they were running those over Altamont for a long time, right?
Yeah, until
the
81.
90s,
Actually, until 82.
Oh, it was in the 80s. All
Yeah,
right.
it was in the early 80s. Yeah. And in some ways, yeah, they made very brilliant, very bold decisions. And then in other ways, it was like an opportunity to get it handed to them. You go back. If you all haven't read, if you're a fan of the WP and you have not read Jeff Acey's book, The Iron Feather, magnificent analysis of the railroad. And he actually goes into some of the lost opportunities, some of the mistakes they made.
Right.
And why they happened. But it's still, there's a few of them where I'm just going, really?
So, Eugene, before it slips away, Dave Falkenberg was asking if anybody's done a model of this.
Not in plastic. Not that I'm aware of. There have been some brass models.
Okay.
In fact, a good friend of ours, Michael Cohen, and I think he's got 3 of these in brass. But I think they were done many years ago. I don't think there's been a newer brass or hybrid model, and I know none accurately have ever been done in plastic.
Okay. Yeah.
Seems there's something Broadway Limited might be interested in producing at some point,
Oh, I'd love that.
because they do a good job with their die-cast models. I just had one come out. It was a GS. So, they're going to do the big Southern Pacific stuff.
Yeah.
What about Western Pacific, man? Come on. Right?
Come on, there were at least 10 of them.
Yeah. Dave's also saying that it would be interesting to do, I don't know if he's talking about, what's the
That's
668?
Katie's caboose.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the bay window wood cabooses rebuilt from the boxcars.
Yeah. Actually, Katie
Yeah,
has an excellent presentation.
She does.
on doing that.
Oh,
She does.
well, then I guess we'll have to talk to Katie.
That would be
about it.
great.
Yeah.
I would love seeing it again. I
Yeah,
saw it.
she did that presentation at
ago.
one of the conventions.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
That was fun for me because, of course, that caboose, her and her husband got that caboose from Golden Gate Railroad Museum.
Right.
When the Western Pacific Museum, when we were all helping Golden Gate move out of Hunters Point. So I saw that caboose there. I saw them prepping it and getting ready to move. We moved 2 others out of there, plus a lot of their other stuff. That would be a show in and of itself. Moving Golden Gate Railroad Museum, that was an adventure.
Well, now that we know that I didn't know she had a presentation.
Oh,
about
yeah.
that.
Yeah. And
Well, we have lunch with John all the time, so we're going to have to.
I knew Katie originally when she worked at Sun Microsystems, and she was like the admin from Admin Town. I mean, she could run a project as well as anybody I know, and was great. And she does this presentation basically talking about, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, moving this thing down, getting the permits for it, all the stuff that went into it, hoisting this thing over the neighbor's house to put it in the backyard. It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And doesn't their house back up on the old WP San Jose branch?
There's some
I'm
creek
not
right
sure
behind the
about that.
house.
Yeah.
I remember it's not too far
Yeah.
away from it, though.
In case
Yeah.
people are wondering, it's friends of ours that we know that have a caboose in their backyard, a Western Pacific caboose in their backyard that was very carefully moved there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going on about it, and people watching are like,
Yeah.
who the hell's Katie, right?
There's
Yeah.
actually a website for it, and I wish I remembered it. But
I think it was wp668.com or
I
.org.
think so. Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to look it up. And
So I see a question. When did they scrap the mallets? The 2662s were all scrapped in 52 and 53, if I remember correctly. I've got the exact dates, but yeah, basically all WP steam engines were scrapped by the end of 53, except for the only five that survive today.
so and it's funny because Western Railway Museum has 2 of them.
Yeah.
Where are the other ones? You know?
Yes,
We have the
165s in
Right,
Portola. It's
right.
the only one that is in operable condition. We're doing a few things with the FRA, and once they sign the paper, we're good. The 164, so it's twin, and the 165 and 164. What I am glad for any, and I know a lot of our WP fans will say the same thing. We're so glad of any WP steam engine that survived, but it is kind of odd that of the 5, 2 of them were secondhand. Because the 164 and the 165 were originally built for United Verde Copper in Arizona. They came to the WP secondhand.
Oh,
So the 164 is in Hewitt Park in Oroville. The 165 is in Portola. You've got the 334, the only surviving 282 at Rio Vista.
right. The 94.
The 94,
which is also,
which is tremendously historic. It pulled the first scheduled passenger train down the Feather River Canyon. So major point in WP history. And then the oddball, WP 26, is at Travel Town in Los Angeles. Somewhere the WP came nowhere near.
yeah, nowhere even close.
And that's one of the 280s. That's one of the Alco 280s that was built in 1909.
Does anybody from Portola have any ideas about maybe trying to acquire any of them for the museum?
I have stories about that.
So probably not.
Can they be told?
Yeah.
I think the people I was dealing with County of LA are no longer with County of LA. But yes, we actually did try. We proposed a trade.
Oh.
Because we had something that would have fit their collection beautifully and that they wanted, but they didn't want to give up their steam engine.
Oh.
Even though they got a bunch of them that are much more appropriate for their. And so the discussion, it was like, look, can we talk? And we kind of did it. And to give you a context, this is going back like 25 years. This is how long we've been working on some of these things. It's going back like 25 years. We're talking with County of LA about this. And they were just like, why? It's just a train. One train's like another train. It was basically kind of the attitude we got from some of the people.
Then why
Wow.
do they want it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's the question I would ask.
I know.
Why do you care? Like,
It was
if
weird.
one train's the same as another, let us send you the one that's the same as one you have.
There have been discussion. There have been discussions internally since about we need to talk to them again because that was a long time ago. A lot of things have changed. They've also got a Western Pacific, actually also ex-Sacramento Northern caboose that's coupled up to it.
That would be relevant too.
Yeah, be very relevant. Yeah, got a lot of funny stories about stuff like that. Wow. Here, I'll tease you one relating to Travel Town. And somebody who might be listening to this, he's going to go, "Oh God, Eugene, don't talk about this." At one point, Travel Town, they've got the original Western Pacific Railway G 440, better known as Stockton Terminal and Eastern Number 1. And at one point, there was an event that I was one of the people involved in setting up that we're talking about having happen. And we had a tentative commitment from Travel Town to truck the Western Pacific Railway G to the event and put it back on home rails in San Jose, California.
That could have been cool.
That would be another, that would be, assuming I can even talk about it, because there's some people who would probably get very mad if I reveal details, but oh my God, the rail fair that almost happened. So Dave, the 2882s, the big womps, the last of them were scrapped end of 52. I think the last one was cut up in November of 52. And all that's left is, like I said, some of the builder's plates. We've got one. I've heard there's a few others out there, some of the number plates. Somebody out there has WP, all those numbers you see on the cab side, a lot of people don't know this. Those were separate enamel plates. They weren't painted on the cab side. Those were actually enameled. Yeah. Those were enameled plates on the later WP engines, including all the 251s. Somebody supposedly has all the numbers off. I think it's the 255.
But you don't know who it is?
I don't know who it is. Somebody told me, oh yeah, he's got them up on his wall.
Well, what a great place for it.
Yeah.
When it could be in the actual Western Pacific Railroad Museum.
Well,
for more than one person to see.
There was actually, we got a call one time from this very elderly gentleman who lived in a mobile home in Palo Alto. He said, I've got some stuff off the Western Pacific Steam Engine. He said, 1953, my father and I went to the scrapyard in South San Francisco, and we took some stuff off one of the engines. And it was a Western Pacific engine, and I'd like to donate it to you. So I get the call. I go to his house, and he opens up this garage that is packed with stuff, old tools, and looked like somebody hadn't been in there. Spider webs everywhere. I mean, it would have been a great haunted house. And he goes all the way into the bag and he starts shuffling through some stuff. He goes, okay, here's one of them. And he pulls out one of these big number boards. And it's number 4. I went, okay, well, that could be any of the engines. And then he pulls out an 8. And he says, I got one more here. And I'm like, oh no. And then he pulls out a number 4, another 4. Western Pacific 484, which was a 484, one of the few times where a locomotive's number matched its wheel arrangement. And he had the enamel cab number plates.
Are they at the museum now?
And they're at the museum now.
I don't think I saw those.
They're off exhibit right now. I don't think we have them in the exhibit room. But yeah, I'm standing there going like, oh my! It was like waiting for the number to pop up on the lotto. It's like if he pulls it, oh my God, this is off one of the 484s. Oh my God!
And what's funny is he probably had no idea really what it was. And he's sitting there in a room with someone who knows exactly what it is.
Yeah, he knew, right? He knew it was a WP steam engine. He didn't know anything beyond that. And I knew all the implications. I'm like, oh!
That's great. Did you make a noise when he pulled the last number out?
No, I was
stone face.
I used to play poker with my friends, so I've developed it.
Squee even a little bit. Huh?
Oh wow, those look pretty good shape.
Yeah. Are you?
Yeah. When I got in the car, I was like. I called up Rod McClure. I said, oh my God.
You're in the guy's garage going, I don't know if we really want. Okay, just put them in the car. Yeah. We'll see what we can do with them. I mean,
Yeah, they're old pieces of metal. I don't know.
If it doesn't fit the museum, we'll throw them away. But you'll get rid of them. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, sir, I'm not seeing a lot of questions coming in from our amazing.
Well, that says two things. Either it was a very comprehensive show,
yep,
or everybody fell asleep.
Well, or it was a comprehensive show and people fell asleep.
And people fell asleep,
except for the 2 Daves who gave us questions.
That's right.
Well,
super
thank
presentation. You. So, see, now someone said that. I knew it was the first time I saw it. So, and I didn't fall asleep. Yeah. So, thank you very much, sir. We'll wrap this up here. I do want to thank everybody for watching. And of course,
thank you.
Yeah, if you know anybody who's interested in the Western Pacific, make sure you share this video with them because they'll probably enjoy the presentation as much as I did. Or maybe more, because like I said, I'm kind of not super hardcore WP. I'm more of a casual observer of all of this stuff. I'm also not super hardcore SP. I know enough to know if someone says something that's complete BS. I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound right,
Or they have the pantograph right behind the smokestack.
Yeah, right. That kind of stuff. And there's another one on the tender. So yeah.
Hey, actually, I'll throw in one more little tidbit. One of the guys in Portola and I, we used to tease that we should build a replica of one of these, and we actually did go and talk to a machine shop, a guy who had rebuilt an old steam engine. And he took a look at it and he went, yeah, we could do that. You don't want to know how much it would cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because even to have
just the material,
and just the exterior materials alone, put in the right place and all that, sounds like it would be.
It was still quite funny to mention in my report to the board of directors. Yeah, we actually went and talked to a machine shop about replicating one of the 2882s. Dead. silence. Just
Yeah.
we're gonna ignore you now.
Yeah. And what would that cost? Yeah. Did
Yeah.
they tell you how much it was going to cost?
Oh, he said easily 10 million.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that
I'm
was 20
surprised
years
that's
ago.
all,
That was
yeah.
20 years ago.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, maybe we can get Taylor Swift or somebody to donate that much money.
Oh, yeah. Because
Hey,
you know,
Warren
she's-
Buffett's a rail fan.
There you go. Yeah.
I think there's some rock stars that are rail fans too, like Rod Stewart.
Well,
and
Neil
Young.
Young,
Neil Young's
who was
rail fan,
actually
right?
a life member of Portola.
Well, what about him? He's a member. You must have his contact.
Yeah, we like to do. You know, if he wants to come up and visit, that's cool.
Oh, okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I see somebody mentioning, yes, the Western Pacific Convention is coming up. We just opened registration a few days ago, October 1st through 4th in Oroville. So home of the Canyon Killers. We're
That's
going to be in Oroville. And so you can go to, I think the news page is up, convention.wplives.org. Or you can go to the online store, westernpacific.bigcommerce.com, and you'll see the registration, the online registration page. And coming up September, I think it's the 28th, is Western Pacific History Day.
Oh,
So we're putting together some stuff, special things. Special things at the museum. I'm getting excited. And then, of course, coming up later in the year at the museum, we got the pumpkin trains, which are always a lot of fun, and the Santa trains.
yeah. You have those Christmas trains.
Yep.
And also, we're talking right now about having the WP convention be hybrid, which means we'll be up there doing a virtual component.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing that there's probably not any virtual registration listed yet.
There is.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can sign up for the virtual.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And,
Cool.
you know, hopefully.
I guess we're doing it then.
Yeah. Hopefully, the last few details we've been discussing, go smoothly, because otherwise, hi, we owe you a refund.
Yeah. But I'm sure. But if you want, you can just make it a donation,
Sure. Oh, we've had that happen.
right? All of that. I'm sure most of the people who would attend a virtual convention would probably do that. But the intention, of course, for the convention is to make sure that we have a virtual component to it.
Yep.
Which, Sydney and I have been doing virtual everything from PCR to that convention, to the SIG meet, to everything. So we're looking forward to doing that up there in Oroville. And it's been a while since I've been through Oroville, so it'll be nice to get up there. Maybe we'll find an excuse to drive up to Portola before or after it.
We're gonna be doing the WP History Day, and then the very next weekend's the convention.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be a lot of stuff packed in 1 week, 2 weekends. And right now we're working on setting up layout tours.
Oh, nice.
I'm working to set up the last time we were in Oroville, the state water board gave us a tour of the Oroville Dam.
Oh,
And then I led a walk down the old Oro Dam WP right-of-way to the wreck site at the tunnel. And so we did a little walking history of the Oroville Dam Railroad and the WP main line. And
that's pretty cool.
trying to do that again this year.
Cool. That's really cool. Of course, if we're doing the virtual, we probably can't attend any of that stuff. But
Well, that'll be on Sunday.
Oh, so it's going to be before that. Okay.
That'll be after. It'll be after the main part of the convention.
I'll get all those dates and places and stuff from you, and we'll figure out something because that sounds like it would be fascinating to do, or even document. You never know. Could be interesting to people here on the channel. So, anyway, is there anything else going on at the museum or plans like that?
We're working on stuff. We're of course we're in the summer season. We're running caboose trains on the weekends. We got our run a locomotive going. One of our guys is working really hard trying to finish up the last painting and body work on Southern Pacific Jeep 92873.
That's the Kodachrome.
That's the Kodachrome.
I got to give famous Kodachrome.
I got to give a big shout out. His name is David Ellums. We've had some people going like, "Wow, that's taken a long time." That engine has seen major mechanical work. We got new radiators for it, and there was a lot. It was a tired old engine when we got it. There's been a lot of body work done so that we can repaint it and have a nice solid engine that's going to run well. David has largely led the charge on that, done a great job. And when that's done, that's going to be back in the run a locomotive program. And with from what I understand, the Kodachrome at Trona has been or is about to be scrapped.
Oh,
which means that this is the last Kodachrome locomotive. Unless somebody decides to repaint one, this is the last Kodachrome locomotive.
so it'll be the last authentic one.
Yeah, the last authentic Kodachrome locomotive.
First time that I ever went to the museum in Portola, they were running that engine on the Run a Locomotive program.
Yep.
So I have some really cool run-bys of it. If I had thought of it if I knew we were going to have this conversation, I would have dug up my run-bys and showed them. If anybody's interested in seeing those, they were on a the second ever Chasing Trains program that ever came out on the channel when I went to Portola with Mike Armstrong of Coaster Fan 2105 fame here on YouTube, and we had a really good time in Feather River Canyon and in Portola checking things out. I think that was the second episode. I don't remember now, but it was a lot of fun. So,
but yeah, we got a lot of work going on. You want to learn to run a train. You want to learn to fix a train. You want to just help with the archives. Yeah, our archives guys are plowing through tons of stuff. We've just got a whole bunch of more stuff again.
People can go work with Ethan.
They can work with Ethan.
Yeah,
work with Carrie.
Oh yeah, Carrie.
Yeah, Carrie Cochran.
Yeah.
Our buddy Mike Cohen is now a restoration manager.
Right.
So yeah, we got a lot of stuff going on up there, and I actually just got preliminary permission from the city. Well, one of my longtime things, I'm one of the many things I'm in charge of up there is the master planning. And we've got a design to eventually rebuild our entrance road. And I just got preliminary permission from the city to start doing some work that'll eventually allow us to take back that hillside that's at our entrance road and actually build a nice real entrance road.
Oh, that'll be nice.
So
Cool.
Hopefully in a few years we'll be seeing that. We're still trying to finish up getting a display building built.
There's always something
there's
going
always
on
something.
at places like that, right?
And help is needed. Who wants to volunteer?
Yeah, WPLives.org, right?
WPLives.org, yes.
Cool.
And of course, shout out NCO. We're looking for members for the NCO too.
Yeah, we'll have to have you come back either with Shane or something, or even just, whatever you can drum up on NCO if he's not available. That would be an interesting program. Another one of those, well, I would say probably, at least in my opinion, the most obscure line that I never heard of, the NCO. So anyway, cool. That's it. We're over our time, guys. We're gonna go now. Thanks everyone for watching. Thank you very much for coming.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Guillermo, for everything once again. Right. And we'll catch everybody on the next episode of Talking Trains. Bye.